Hello everybody, thanks for joining in. I'm Chad from Turner's Warehouse, and I think we got a good one today. It's going to be, I would say it's probably on the more easy side of a project, but it's going to be a really cool pen, I think, when we're done. And it's one I haven't done before, so it's going to be fun to see how it comes out. And I'm going to show you a couple tricks along the way. What I'm talking about is circuit board pens, and I've made a lot of circuit board pens back like, what, 7-8 years ago when I was doing a lot of shows. We live in an area where, I forget who it was, Intel was one, and maybe like Motorola, but there were several tech like manufacturing around, so like circuit board pens did real well at shows for me. So I used to make them in batches of like 50 and 100, which was pretty cool, but you crack a lot of them, or at least you used to, because the old days they were cast in polyester resin, and it's really kind of tough. I think now they're cast in epoxy, which we're going to find out here in a minute. But we haven't had any new ones for a while, and now we got some new ones, so that's kind of cool. But I'm going to show you a couple tricks that I do for circuit board pens, kind of similar to watch part pens, so that I don't risk cracking them or cracking the clear coat. All right, let's jump into it. Let me show you a couple things, if I get the right camera here. So this is the set for the Slimline that we're going to make, and I'm actually going to do a black enamel Slimline. I think it's going to look really bomb with the black circuit boards. But we have a couple other circuit boards. To me, green and black are the best. They're my favorite. Green by far is my favorite. But like in Cigar, we have white, green. In Monarch, we have black, green. I think we might even have orange or blue in a couple of them, but I didn't bring them all. But I just wanted to show you. That's how they come. Most of the time, they're pretty close to being squared on the ends, but not quite. There's just a little bevel. So I use the sanding jig with the punch set to square them. That's how they look so clean on the end. And I think Amy may have, or she might post a little clip of squaring these on the jig. We've done it before, so if you want to look back at other shorts or something. But it's a real easy way to square up fragile blanks without damaging them. So that's what we're going to make today, is a black circuit board Slimline in black, which to me seems crazy, or in the old days it seemed kind of crazy just because of the cost of these, but they've kind of gone down a lot. Like this set is now $12. So between this and the kit was $350-ish. I mean, you're in it for $15, but I think on a low end you could sell this for $45 3 times, but I think I'd probably price these at like $60. So it depends on your audience, of course, and who you're after, but awesome gifts for $15 or great sellers for $15. So either way it works out. But let's get this started, and we'll show you what's going on here. All right, I'm using a mandrel because this is a Slimline. I don't have any TBC, anything for Slimline. I always use a mandrel. Now, I do one blank at a time. So I'm going to set one back there, and I'm going to put this on. I do have one Slimline bushing. I could do another for space if I want, but I don't really need it. There's enough room with this. This mandrel's like profiled enough that one is plenty. But I am going to use a mandrel saver. Now here's something kind of cool. So this is the deluxe pen mandrel and mandrel saver. That's what it looks like. But I actually have been using my record lately, and I know I sound like a broken record. Get it? This is the, dang it, I always forget the name of it. Falcon set. And it's a live center, and it has a pen mandrel saver that you can plug in, or a 60-degree, or a like a crown point, or just an extended point, which I use a lot too. But this thing is awesome, and I really like the quality. It's made in England, and I've been using this for like months and months now, and it's holding up perfectly. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've been using that more than the one that came with the set. But just a couple of quick things here. When you're turning circuit boards or any delicate resin, you know, don't slam your tailstock up to your blank. I kind of stop short, lock the tailstock, and then I'll slowly snug it. And that way I'm just putting a little pressure on it here versus jamming the whole thing and risking cracking it, especially with watch parts. That's why I started doing that, but it's very valid here as well. So just give it a nice snug without going crazy. I can use a little tiny tool rest. I'm going to use carbide. I'm going to use easy wood. I'm going to use a square with a radiused negative rake. Now I don't necessarily need negative rake. This is going to turn pretty smooth, I think. But since it's on my tool, I'm going to go ahead and use it. And then I'm going to use a regular finisher, which is the round tool. And I'll probably use that if I need to just get in there and move some material a little faster. So it'll be pretty easy. And the turning is pretty straightforward. So the turning we won't take a lot of time on, but we are going to take time on the polishing and assembly, which is where most of the like little tips and tricks come in. So if there's anything that comes up, just shout it out and we'll get started here. But let me show you this setup here. So you can see my mandrel and my mandrel saver. I use the mandrel saver, which slides over the mandrel. So whether I put on 2 pieces or 1, you see if I put the second one on there, it slides over the mandrel. Or if I take it off and put 1, it slides over the mandrel, just goes up further. So the reason I like to do this is I have less chance of bowing my mandrel because it's shorter and it's got basically something holding it on each side that short. So that's why I always turn 1. I've only turned 1 body for years. I probably haven't put 2 bodies on a mandrel in like 15 years or more. And I just think it's better quality. If it works for you, do whatever works. Oh, good question. The question is, what speed am I turning? Right now it's spinning at 1200, but I'm going to turn it up. I would spin these as fast as my lathe will go. This one goes 3800. And you can see, we're just gonna, here, we'll round this. This was square. I mean, it wasn't like sharp corners, but it was square. So I'm just gonna take my little negative rake here, just walk across it. You see I'm kind of at an angle. And there's little chips coming off, but I'm only cutting a little tiny bit. But what you see is it's not like beating me up. It's not bouncing the tool. If I tried to go face on like this, it would really like be grabbing a lot of material. You can see on this corner, there's barely any material that I cut. So until we get this round, you know, it's going to be kind of rough, even though it's small. But by turning it higher speed and with this negative rake, I can kind of ease in on it and just make it round. And the chips will start short because you're only cutting a little piece. As the chips get longer and longer and then turn into ribbons, that means you're going all the way around the material. So we can keep going across, you know, using that corner, like I said in the beginning, until it gets round. And we can do this however many times we want. I'm barely taking any off, but I could go a lot deeper. So you can go a little slower and deeper. You can see that's a much bigger cut. And it's starting to spin. And go whichever direction you're comfortable with. Now I'm starting to get little ribbons like this. So I can probably go more facing on it. And now I'm going to cut ribbons. So you can see that we're getting little tails shooting off instead of little chips. But you can still hear kind of that crunchy sound. That's where it's breaking from material to air, right there. So once I get that round, my ribbons will be solid and it won't make that noise. There we go. See, those ribbons are solid now. And this definitely smells like epoxy. It's not like offensive like polyester used to be. And it's like big ribbons. If this was polyester, these would just be all crackly and fall off. but let's see. Polyester's the worst. It made nice pens, but it was the worst to turn, the worst to cast. All right, so we're all round. Now we can just shape this guy up. And I mean, I'm gonna just do the whole thing with this negative rake because it's kind of easy. Now, I don't know how much room I have with these circuit boards on these little Slimlines. I didn't really examine them. So I'm going to kind of leave it a little plump, not crazy, but a little bit more than I might normally. And you can just knock the chips away. I got a brush here. With the mandrel saver, the mandrel comes off the headstock, yes. So this is the headstock, the motor end. The mandrel is wedged into the Morse taper here. So the mandrel is spinning. Now it's not spinning inside of the tailstock, it's spinning the tailstock with it. So you can see how this is moving the same as my hand. So by putting pressure on the mandrel, I'm essentially putting pressure back on this, and the whole thing is now spinning because of the motor. Does that make sense? So the mandrel's sticking through here, it's just sticking in the air inside the tailstock, but the pressure here on the bushing and the the mandrel saver is what's making the whole thing spin. So when I start it up, this spins too, and you want that. If this was too loose and backed off, it wouldn't spin, and that would mean your mandrel was like floating on its own. So you wouldn't want that. All right, let's get a little closer to the bushing here. It is weird turning Slimlines after making so many big pens over the years. These are so small, but I still like Slimlines. If you have a bad feeling about Slimlines, like, give them another shot, because whether you're doing gifts or selling, Slimlines probably should be part of it. If not, you're missing a segment in multiple ways. All right, so that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm gonna make a little pass here, make sure I don't have any ridges or anything. Looks pretty good. And we have a slight, like, bumpus shape, not real big, but slightly. All right. So that was pretty easy. And it looks like, I mean, I definitely didn't hit any parts. And it actually looks like I have tons of room. So maybe those are really low parts in there. I don't know what kind of circuit boards they actually make these out of, but they don't seem to have a lot of raised pieces. All right, so we're gonna put the next one on. And remember, Slimline just goes right on the mandrel, where every other kit is suspended on the mandrel by the bushing. So Slimline is just sitting on the mandrel. Slide this up, get it close, and then slowly lock it down. Did that answer the question, I hope? No? Oh. All right. Well, it sounds like Amy's moderating and she's having some technical difficulties. So if you don't see your question get answered, just repeat it a little later and we'll try to get it going for you. All right, so let's look at this here real quick. We're gonna go, this is the square blank, this is how they're cast. Like I said, the corners aren't sharp, they're not like round, but they're just like smooth corners. But look at how clear that is. These are really clear casts. They're definitely epoxy. All right, so I'm gonna show you, you can go just a little deeper. And I do wanna go a little slower when I go deeper because I don't wanna pull chips. But you can see those chips that I am cutting are real big, right? So that's the square or the radius. So that's one cut from square to round. Now let's do the round finisher tool. And we can do the same thing, bringing it on the end and just make a slower, bigger cut. And I'm already getting ribbons because I cut deep enough that it's continuing. So really get to know your tools and you can kind of do this stuff relatively quickly. So this was the negative rake square and this was the round. And I mean, they look identical. So you don't have to do it all in one cut, but you certainly can. And it just kind of is good practice for your tool control. So we'll clean that off. Now I'm going to just bring this down. Still got a little bit of add around right there. See those little chips turn into ribbons? So look at this. This is more than the whole blank looked like of just shavings. Green Slimlines in gold hardware. That's a good look. So I'll tell you my best selling circuit board pen, if you can still hear me. Cigar pen with the green circuit board in the black tie platinum finish, black tie platinum that we have at Turner's. I've been making that for like 10 years. And I used to have companies that would a couple times a year order like 50 or 75 or 100, and that was really good because it was really lucrative when I was selling pens full time. But anyway, that was my number one combo. It looks awesome. I always called it the high tech, the lowest tech, high tech thing ever because it's a pen, but it looks all high tech. And people in the industry, computers, tech, IT, whatever, they loved it. So anyway, a little tidbit for anybody selling or gifting. But let's get going here. So we're just going to finish turning this. And then we'll get into the polishing, sanding, assembly, which is the most important part with these because there's not a whole lot of turning and it's not difficult because it's epoxy resin. All right, we'll give it a little tiny bit of shape here. I don't want it too fat. No pregnant pens. All right. What? Oh, thanks. It's tough to make a good recovery when technology fails because it's real frustrating. Like you get on a roll and then everything just shuts off. And it's really not like anything we can control. I mean, I guess we could like change our internet, which we're gonna have to. But like everything was working great and then it just stops. Maybe it's the time of day. We do it at 3 o'clock and everybody's doing stuff at 3 o'clock. Okay. So I was turning at 3,800 and it literally took, like a minute. So the turning is pretty quick and easy on these. Now let's do some polishing and sanding. Let me move some of this out of the way. Get that. Now I'm just going to go between, Now we can leave this on here. We'll just do the, I'll put the finishing bushings on. I don't like to sand next to metal. So I don't want to have the Slimline bushings on here, but we can take care of that. All right, so I'm just putting finishing bushings on. Now, these aren't going to work as planned because they're meant to go inside of a tube. And obviously the Slimline is too small for the bushing to go inside. However, it'll still just hold it in place so that I can sand this and polish it without any worries. All right. Now, I'm going to be using some 600 sandpaper. This is just like high quality wet dry sandpaper. I usually use 600 and or 800 to sand stuff once I've turned with carbide. If it's rough for some reason, I might start with 400, but that's real rare. 600, 800 is really all you need. We do have it in the store from like 400 to 1,000, but we're gonna just use this. So I'm gonna use 600 and I'm gonna turn the lathe down to like 700 to 900. Let's see. And you can see it's spinning a little bit there, like my life center is catching. So I need to snug it up just a bit. And I just don't want it to spin when I put pressure on it. Here, I'll try to hold this upside down. So now I'm just going to sand this, and all I'm doing with the sandpaper is trying to make sure it's as flat as I want and there's no tool marks. I'm really not trying to shape or do anything drastic because I should have done all that with the tool. And just that quick, like there's really no marks. So I don't know that you'll be able to see it from the camera, but if I stop this, it looks pretty smooth. Wait, right? Maybe right there. Let's do a little more. But if you make a good final pass, you don't have a lot of sanding to do. So you can really just do it fairly quickly with a high grit. The reason I don't start with a low grit is if I start lower, I've got to then sand out all those lines I put in with the sandpaper, and that's no fun. It takes extra time for no benefit. But you can see the white on there, that's the resin. All right, feels pretty good. Okay.
What's the best speed for sanding?
My favorite speed for sanding pens is 7 to 900. If your lathe goes a little faster, a little slower, that'll be fine. But try to keep it in that range. That's also what I drill pens at. And there again, it's just a range. It's not a hard and fast rule. So if my lathe was geared up or down and I didn't want to switch it for that, I probably would just adapt to the closest thing. Good question. All right, next I'm going to go to Zona paper. If you are not familiar with Zona paper is a polish paper system, and I say system loosely, it's just papers. It's similar to micro mesh or any sanding pad polish. Oh, what a bummer. I didn't know the bottom was cut open. Let me get that. I don't want to get these all dirty. At least they fell into my bin. Well, it's the shaving bin. All right, I'll clean these later. Okay, so now there's dust everywhere. Okay, so it's just like micro mesh or any other polishing pad system. What I like about it is there are 6 pieces, 6 colors instead of 9. And they are like, oh, son of a gun. Amy, can you reach that? Sorry. Amy's going to have to reach down here. Oh, wait, I'm in the wrong camera. Sorry, I was talking to the camera the whole time. That's Amy. Thank you, Amy. So there are 6 pads, not pads, papers, instead of 9. Boy, we better start over. And they start from like around 800 or 900 in grit, which is 30 microns, to up to 1 micron, which is like 24,000. So it's a quicker range, but they do a really good job. Everything we have on display and everything I make for the most part is done with Zona paper. Now occasionally I might use like a higher grade plastics polish on top of it to kind of finish it off or give it a little like wet shine. But generally I don't even do that because this stuff works really well. And you saw it comes in sheets and they're normally 8.5 by 11. This is cut in half because I've already used half of it. And I just cut off squares, and you can make them as small or as large as you want. I usually do like 1 inch by maybe 3/4 of an inch. And I'll use these for like 4 or 5 pens, and then I'll switch them. So you get quite a bit out of these, and you just use them like any sandpaper. But remember, they're not sandpaper. They're only going to polish your marks. They won't remove any marks. But you'll see quickly that the white will start to build up. So it is taking resin off, but it won't take off near as much as you think. So with each pad or each color, I keep saying pad, with each color I like to go for at least like 35 to 45 seconds. Generally, I'll go a little longer, especially if I have time. And this will just really shine it. Whenever anyone spends more time on these polished papers, the Zona paper, they get a better shine. And you're going to see this is going to come out like glass. I can already tell you because the cast looks so good. The casts were really, really clear and clean. So this is going to come out really good. And I'm trying to hold it underneath so you guys can see. But really, you just want to put pressure on it. Not crazy pressure, but a good amount of pressure. Keep it wet, switch it often. I do everything wet from the sanding to the polishing. And the main reason is I think it looks better. It's always clearer and brighter, wet sanded in my opinion. But the main other reason, or the best reason, is that the dust is in the water and not in the air. So I didn't need any dust collector for sanding here because it was all wet. And this is just the second grit, and you can already start to see that it's starting to shine. So that's looking pretty good already. And there again, new piece, just dunk it in the water. Get it up there and sand it. All right. And we're going to do these pretty quick, and then we'll get to the assembly because that's where I want to show you a few things. But this is going to be a good looking pen in a Slimline because it's going to be all black with the black circuit board. So I think it's going to look really good. All right, so I'm just putting pressure on these, getting it wet often, keeping that dust in the water. The fanciest or most upscale thing on a Slimline, I mean, in my opinion, it'd probably be like some really good wood, like some Honduran rosewood or something, because I like to do that. But as far as what other people might say is like watch parts on a Slimline. I've done a lot of steampunk Slimlines and stock Slimlines. And they all do very well, like in popularity. It's just the thing is, you know, if you take the same amount of time to do something on a Slimline that you do on something else that you can sell for more or whatever, it's hard to like focus on them. But on something like this where the cost and effort are relatively similar to like doing a wood pen, you know, I guess it's more on a blank scale, but this is probably going to be one of the cooler Slimlines because of the all black design and the circuit board look. All right, so I've switched blanks. Yep.
Can you go over again why you use nylon bushings?
Yes. So I switched blanks, so I'm back to this. The reason I have nylon bushings is I don't like to have the metal up next to the Slimline when I'm sanding. Now, especially with wood, but even with resin, if I had the metal bushings up here and I even just barely touched them, I'm going to get black dust from the steel sanding into the bushing or into the blank. So if you have wood, it's a real killer. Now with resin, it's not going to let the dust into there, but it might scratch it or make it dull. And I don't want that to like cause me any trouble. So I don't want those Slimline bushings right up there next to it. You could either do it between centers or just use these nylon finishing bushings to separate it from the bushings, which is what I'm doing here. Generally, when you use these nylon bushings, your tube will fit over them a little bit and it'll help them suspend. But we don't need that with the Slimline. All right, so I'm on to Zona. I'm going to start with the green. That was a good question. Probably with new people, the biggest problem when they make a wood pen and they sand with the bushings is they always wonder, like, how do I get these little black spots? Or why does it look dirty on the ends? And that's what it is. You never want to sand anything with the metal bushings next to it. Even resin, because it'll somehow mar up your finish in a way you don't want. So definitely take that little bit for all your turnings. So I'm just working my way through these grits. Like I said, 6 instead of 9 is kind of a cool thing. Makes it faster and easier, and honestly, I think it's a better polish. I don't have anything against micro mesh. We use it, have it, but this is my personal choice and has been for a number of years. And this is what we use in all our classes too, and people really it's really easy to do a good job with it, which is nice. While I'm doing this, because this is kind of the boring few minutes, we do have a couple of cool demos coming up. On the 27th is Emily Ford. She's going to be doing a demo here at the shop. It'll be broadcast here on YouTube for free. So make sure you mark your calendar for that. What time is that? 11? 11 Arizona time. So look up whatever Arizona time is where you are, because I can't keep track of all the time zones.
Right now, Arizona's on Mountain Standard.
Right now, Arizona is Mountain Standard. So you can watch that online here for free, or if you're local or want to make a trip to warm up in Arizona, you can watch it in the shop here in person. And Emily's going to be doing captive rings, which is a killer demo, and something you can use for a lot of different projects. So you're going to want to check that out. It's going to be a really good demo. She's a great turner.
If you want to be reminded, the live stream link is already posted. So
Okay.
you can go to that and click on notification or notify me.
Yeah. So in case you didn't hear, Amy said if you want to be reminded of that, the live stream link is already posted, and you can go on our channel here and click notify me. And that way when that demo comes up, you can watch it. And that all is free. She volunteered to do that for us, and we jumped at the chance. So give her a shout out and tell her thanks if you would. Beyond that, we've got a lot of cool demos planned and live streams planned here. We got kitless stuff coming up. We've got some ring stuff coming up. And if there's anything you want us to do that you want to see, let us know, and we'll see what we can do for you. So we always love hearing ideas, because sometimes you guys think of really cool stuff. All right, so we're going to call this one good. This is the white. This is the last one. And let's take a look how shiny this is. I mean, that's a great looking blank. All right, so make sure you don't drop your bushings. So let's go to this cam. That is cool looking. So really good. So, I mean, had I not paused for our technical difficulties, this is maybe like 10 minutes of turning, sanding, and polishing, which is really good for a two-piece pen and something that looks this cool. Let's now jump over to the press area where we can assemble this, and I want to give you guys a couple tips on this. Okay. So got my pen press here. I'm going to kind of push that back for a minute. The main thing that you want to do with this or any other fragile blank, let me use the bag here so I don't scratch these up, is you want to make sure when you press your parts that you have sufficient space to press it in. Now, there's a couple of things to be aware of. One is your pen parts. Now, this is a black enamel kit. So it will have a thicker plating or painting, whatever you want to call it, than, like something else maybe, like a chrome or something that's thinner. So this is going to always be a little tighter squeeze than some of the others. Now, I think they do try to do a good job and make them size correctly, but you got to imagine they're making millions of these things, I'm sure, and there's going to be some variation. So you don't want to just throw it on your on your press and smash them together, because you risk cracking. Now, hey, I am going to hit these with a little ring bling. Ring bling is like a polish cleaner, and that way I can get a little wet shine to these, because they look really clear, but I want them to look wet all the time. I don't need the water. You can do this with a paper towel. I'm going to use this micro mesh pad, or micro polish towel, whatever. All right, and all this is going to do is give it a little clean, wet look. And it doesn't take a lot, just a little back and forth to kind of work that stuff in. All right, see if you can tell a difference here. So that's with, that's without. I mean, maybe a little. It's hard to say. Yeah, they did come out good and shiny, but this will kind of just keep them. It's hard to beat that, wet, watery, drippy look. All right, so that's it. There we go. Okay, so back over to the table. We got our two blanks. Now, there's a few things I like to do with this. So, first thing I'm going to do is take my blank and my reamer. This is just a reamer. We've got this one. This is a blade style, as well as the pivoting head type, which are both really good. And this will just take off any burrs. So if you have any burrs from your tube being squared, this will take care of that. And you just want to do both sides of both tubes. And you can see maybe these little shavings that came out. So it really does a good job of kind of beveling that end. Now, on a bigger tube like a Monarch or a cigar, I might actually go in the tube with my sander. Oh, is that blocking?
Got a big handle.
Oh, here, let me just move that. I might actually go in the thing with my sander or my Dremel head and kind of just give it a little reamer out there. But with a Slimline, I don't have that option. Now, I could stick this one in the end here. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my parts, and I'm just going to very carefully, and I say very carefully because you don't want to hit your actual metal part, but I'm going to just give it a little sand. And I'm holding the Dremel still and rolling the part into it. And you can see really quickly the paint that comes off of that onto for the tip. So that's the tip. I don't really need to worry about the center band. I'm going to go ahead and hit the back cap here. Now, one thing I do is I kind of use my finger to keep me from getting too close to the very end of the part. So by holding the tool still and moving the part to it, I can kind of do better control of that. So you see there, maybe? It's really hard to see on a Slimline part. That's that. So now, if I was doing cigars, I would literally go around every pressed part and sand or Dremel them. And that way I don't have to worry about any parts being too big. Let me switch this around so you all can see. Now, here's the fun part, the assembly. So we want to make sure we don't booger up any of our finish of our parts. And we also want to look at our components here and see which place we want them to go. To me, this kind of looks more like the front. I don't know why. And then that's kind of like center bandy. So I'm going to do this first. We're going to do the front. Now, this is a good lesson for Slimlines, whether it be circuit board or not. But you can see my part pushes about halfway on and then stops because that's kind of where I stopped the paint. Now I can always come back and go a little further if I'm worried about it. There we go. But I don't want it necessarily loose on this one, but I don't want it so tight that it's going to crack the surface here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. It's kind of holding itself because I was able to push it about halfway on. So I'm going to load it up. This is the Milescraft press. It's spring loaded, so once you put the part in, it'll kind of hold it in place, although you do want to balance it. So then you put the number of blocks you need, and I'm going to go ahead and pinch up here. Try to do it backwards so you can see. And I'm going to just put a little pressure to get it started. And I'm just watching to make sure it goes straight. Now the cool thing is I had a fair amount of material in there, so it was kind of starting straight anyway. But there we go. It's pressed on nicely. See if we can get it like showing. I don't know. Okay, now this is the tricky part with Slimlines. I always feed my ink into the transmission. And then I rotate it. I'm squeezing here. Excuse me. That's a rare sneeze. So I'm pinching right here on the gold part. That's where the press will press it into the tube, and I can twist my transmission in and out. I'm advancing it all the way down. This would be where the ink is sticking all the way out. And then I like to eyeball where this will be in terms of how far I press it in. Now, ideally, most of the time, your Slimline is going to be on this little line on your transmission. However, if you took a little more off your blank than you should have, it might be a little further back. Or if for some reason you were using a tube that was a little long because you cut it yourself, it might have to press in a little further. So by kind of doing this little eyeballing, if I hold it right at that line, I can say, okay, that's a perfect amount of ink out. And if I reverse it, pinch it and reverse it, I can look at it and say, okay, that's fully withdrawn. So I want to be right at the line. So now I'm going to take this ink out and I'm going to get this lined up. Now, if I was worried about this, which I kind of am, I can do just a tiny bit of sanding just to make it a little bit friendlier. I don't want to take off too much though, because if this slips in there, it won't advance the ink. But that just gives me a little bit of a starting point. Okay, move those back. Once again, it's going to kind of hold in place once you get it on. Now this is probably the trickiest part. I'm going to hold it, and I just got to make sure that this doesn't go sideways. And you can see my kind of wobbling there. I want to stop and look at it. Looks okay. It's not crooked. Because if it's crooked when it's going in, it's going to go and it's going to lift your surface of your plastic here on your resin. It's going to crack it. Okay, let's see. And we're going to go just to the line. And that's pressed in. Now I can test it by feeding this in, advancing it, and reversing it. So there's all the way back. It's withdrawn perfectly and out. So we are in good shape there, and it looks good. Now I can just slide the center band over the transmission, and all I have to do now is assemble the clip and slide it together. So the clip, you do want to kind of look at it and see where you want it. I'm going to put it right there so it's kind of in the middle of that block. All right. And this one is a little tricky because you got to kind of hold it in place. Put up a couple of these, and I'm just going to squeeze it here to make sure it starts off straight. Oh, my clip fell, but I can move it back. Okay, we're in good shape. It's looking good. And you want to press it till it's snug, but don't keep going and, risk cracking. So anytime you're doing a clear cast like this, whether it be circuit boards, watch parts, labels, whatever, you don't want to overdo it and crack it for no reason. Now, let's see how this looks. We'll kind of line up these parts here. Boom. Look at that. I don't know what you think, but that is a cool looking pen. So, that's a fairly simple, wouldn't you say? Amy, on a scale of 1 to 10, how easy was that? 10 being the hardest. Amy says a 4. I say it's a 2. I mean, that's super simple and easy and quick, and it really looks cool. Here, let's, ow, hit my elbow. Hopefully you guys can see. That's a cool looking black circuit board with black pen parts. I think that's easily a $65 pen. That's probably what I'd put it at. And that's a pretty good price for a circuit board pen because cigars are a lot more. But I don't know, what do you think? Pretty easy pen. Remember those little tricks, because you might not use them on circuit boards because you might never make a circuit board, but anytime you have a delicate blank or a delicate piece of wood that can't handle any outward pressure, which is what happens when you press parts together, you can relieve a little bit of that pressure by removing some of the finish. In this case, it was the black enamel, but it works the same if it's chrome or gunmetal or gold or whatever. You can just take a tiny bit off at a time to see how it fits. And I do a lot of pens that way to make sure that we don't crack them. So it's a good thing to know. And then remember that reamer, because that's probably the number one problem I see in the store when people have assembly trouble, is something doesn't start fitting correctly or line up well. It's because there's a little burr on the end of their tube, and that little bevel reamer thing works really well. And we do have those if you want to put them in the link. So if you have any questions, let me know. Hopefully you think this is pretty cool. This one will be on display in the store, so if you're local, you can see it. If you have any questions on the other circuit board stuff, let me know. They do turn really easy now. This is so nice compared to how they used to be. I mean, when I would turn like 50 cigars in the past, I'd probably break like 10 of them because they were so brittle. They were polyester resin, and I'm pretty sure they mixed their polyester resin way too hard. Like, so if I looked at it wrong, it would crack. So these are just really easy and smooth, and they look really good. Don't forget about the upcoming live streams. If you would, please subscribe if you haven't done that already, and hit a thumbs up. All right, well, thanks everybody. If there's nothing else, we'll call it for today. Thanks guys, fade to black.